Okay, so welcome back to part 2 of Pat Joyce and Casper here on the pod on Out on a Limb. Thanks for coming back for part 2, or for continuing from the last episode if that's what's happened. God knows, we run these things like a circus.
Maybe this ends up in the bin. Who knows?
Who knows? I could just throw it all away, but I don't know. I get the sense not. But we've got to at least do a certain amount of actual talking about comedy. I know we talked about comedy a little bit, and also Pat hasn't had a snack yet, so we've got quite a lot to get through. We're gonna have snack. We're gonna have
Fucking starve.
Oh my god, he's not even eaten. I should have offered you toast or something. You can eat the dog. He's a delicious cashew. A cashew later, man. He looked at me.
I think from time to time about if Cashew and I were stuck in like a, like we had to be for some reason isolated, like who would eat the other one first. I think that he would eat me first.
We're girls doing a podcast about stand-up comedy. It's Out on a Limb.
Some ass jerky.
Yeah.
Dry you out. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm disturbed. Right, so we're going to actually talk about some more comedy stuff. So last time on Out on a Limb, we got weirdly into anthropology. Why can't I say that word? Anthropology. That's correct, right?
Yeah, you're confusing anthropology and etymology, I believe.
I believe so. And that in itself is a bit of etymology.
So it is. Ology means the study of.
It does. So this is pathology. Because last time we got deep into
The study of dads.
Doesn't know it needs to be paternal. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's again etymology.
It needs to be patter. I suppose it is patter.
No, hang on. My brain got confused between 2 points. Father, etymology, different thing. Anyway, so patter.
Mein Pater ist.
Is that, you're
Meine
back to
Pater.
being German again. Is that Argentinian German?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So we're back. Episode 2, most likely, because it's all good stuff. I don't want to delete big portions of interesting conversation, but we got into anthropology, and we talked a little bit about the trauma of growing up in school. And interesting to learn that pretty much Pat, despite being in the other side, well, the other West, depending which way you go, it's all West.
That's right.
That was East, West. There we go. Yeah. We had pretty similar experiences growing up, and thus leading to being weird, mad performers. And we'll talk a little bit more about Pat's sort of performance history in a little bit, but actually we'll talk about some comedy things. So how long we've now been doing comedy 8 months? 8 months? How many gigs have you actually done in that time?
It's not that many. I've been approaching it as a pastime, so quite casually. I think I hit 10. I did. Yeah, I hit 10 recently, so I'm in the double digits now.
Yeah.
So in theory, I've been doing comedy since November, so I was at 8 months by your count. But in reality, in practice, I mean, 10 gigs. That's like maybe a month's worth of comedy in terms of performances. But
2 months.
Yeah,
What a week.
maybe 2 months. I think fruit drops when it's ripened.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was really I thought I was going to be quite slow off the mark with it, and then I landed up doing it really quickly. And then I'd hit like 30 gigs by March, like the end of March, and then I've slowed down a bit, and I've done like one a week pretty much, give or take. But like everybody who's on here, we're all babies. We're all figuring it out. It's not a professional comedy podcast. It's not even a semi-professional comedy podcast. It's about us going out on a limb and figuring out what we like about it.
I mean, maybe we should take a break for our sponsors.
Diet Coke and Audible.
Brought to you by
Squarespace.
Brought to you by Mattress in a Box.
All the varying kinds. I want a Helix next. I have an Emma. No, a Casper right now.
Whoa.
I know all the mattresses. That's podcasting for you.
I have a fun story to tell you
Go on.
about Casper. So you might not know this, but along with Casper the mattress, when I was growing up, Casper was a friendly ghost.
I'm familiar,
Mm-hmm.
being of pretty much the same age.
There was a film of Casper the Friendly Ghost.
An animated one. No,
No,
sorry,
no,
like
no,
a
no.
CGI on top of real life.
I mean, Casper was not. They obviously you can't capture ghosts on camera, so they had to CGI it.
I'm not sure
But the
it's
film
orbs.
was live action, starring Christina Ricci. I'm talking about live action. This is important because in the film Casper the Friendly Ghost,
Yes.
the villain is a rich heiress who's I think is going to inherit the house that Casper and the other ghosts. What are they? Stinky, Fatso,
I've forgotten.
and Skinny.
Definitely.
Skinny, Stinky, and Fatso. Maybe
These are
Those are the-
2024 safe names.
they're the three other ghosts. Casper's uncles or brothers or something. Anyway, so in this film,
They're all adjectives. What does Casper mean as an adjective?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know why all these maybe that's why they're grumpy, because they're kind of mean in the film. Maybe they're grumpy because they've just
They're
been
being
given
discriminated against.
names based on characteristics that are not really all that flattering about them. But
Just
anyway,
like Sexy the Ghost.
yeah, where's like where are the ghosts that are named like Care Bears? Where's
Yeah.
Brave Ghost or whatever. Anyway, so in this film, the villain is a rich heiress who I think wants to inherit the house and probably banish the ghosts or whatever. And she is played by Kathy Moriarty.
Right.
Kathy Moriarty, you may also know from the Scorsese and Robert De Niro boxing film Raging Bull.
Right.
You may also know Kathy Moriarty from
Pat, get on with it.
she's been in a bunch of stuff.
This is the IMDb here.
Yeah.
We've all seen Casper, right?
Anyway.
If you don't, look it up.
Spoiler alert, if you have not seen Casper,
And-
just give the audience a time to skip ahead. If you've not seen Casper, spoiler
In
alert.
the 30 years since it came out.
Yeah, I like to be considerate.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, Kathy Moriarty gets turned into a ghost at the end.
Oh, damn. Does that mean she dies?
I guess so, yeah. She turns into a
It's
ghost.
dark.
she's killed. Anyway, she becomes a ghost.
Bridges Terabithidal territory here.
The important thing though for this story is when I was a child in Nova Scotia, I was a child actor. And I was in a film called New Waterford Girl, produced in 1999.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were in Casper. I was
No.
excited.
No. Probably would have said that by now if that had been the case.
I don't know, Pat. You're taking a long time to explain.
It's called Backstory. So I was in a film called New Waterford Girl, filmed in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And I played a character called Darcy Benzoa, who was a kid from New York who had moved to Nova Scotia. And the actor who played my mother...
Christina Ricci?
Obviously not.
Sorry, did I ruin your little story, Pat?
Have you not been listening?
I
Seems quite clear that you've not been listening.
I've been listening. I don't want to blame my disability here, but I have ADHD, and it's very hard when someone lists an IMDb page at you as the warm up to this. What's her name again? She was in the Scorsese Raging Bull movie. See, I was listening. I
My
forgot
mother,
her name.
when I was a child actor, my mother was played by Kathy Moriarty,
There you go.
who was in Casper the Friendly Ghost also.
Please tell me there's more to the story.
feels a bit anticlimactic now.
No, that's anticlimactic. Give me the fucking drop. I need the
See,
punchline.
if you hadn't interrupted the flow of the story, I think that would have been. That's the story. That's the story about Casper the Friendly Ghost. We got to this story from Casper Mattresses, and I wanted to say, in Casper the Friendly Ghost, the main villain also played my mother in a film.
So you could have said
Which is
that.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool if you told me that.
I know.
Come and see Pat shows where he talks for 9 minutes and tells one punchline.
I'm a storyteller.
I mean, it's funny. I feel.
What's your next question?
What was my last question? How many gigs have you done? Yeah,
10.
what's been your favorite of the gigs that you have done?
I mean, I think by and large they've just gotten more fun the further along they've gone. Because I've obviously gotten more comfortable with with performing and with my material and all that, and kind of learn things. I did very much enjoy the show that we did for the Glasgow International Comedy Festival. Because
Which you hosted.
I was hosting that one, which was quite nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I quite enjoyed hosting, so that was a lot of fun.
How did you feel like it was different hosting than just standing up?
I mean, I think because I was new as a host, I probably was not doing hosting the way that you normally are meant to or would. Like I went up, most of my stuff was pre-scripted. Like I did minimal crowd work, but it wasn't like the crowd work. I kind of had, a choose your own adventure option regardless of what they say. So it didn't really matter what they said because I wasn't quite prepared enough for like.
I think that's what you're supposed to do.
I mean, I suppose, yeah.
I think like of all the hosts that I've seen, the majority of hosts kind of it's pre-written. Like I did like one recently where I did a bit of crowd work, and because I'd hosted before I started doing comedy, but so it wasn't like comedy hosting, but I just used my natural funny or whatever. But I did a bit recently where I asked someone a bunch of questions, and regardless of what they said, it set up my joke. And it was like asking them about how they knew the person who was performing and blah, 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 blah. And then how are they related? And then I use that to say about how I've been related to something. Are you trying to eat something? There's nothing good under there.
The dog is cleaning the floor.
Yeah. I mean, this is good. I mean, he's wrecked the couch, so I'm gonna have to lint roll after this.
Big time.
That
was a fun.
I think you did really well
gig.
hosting that. I thought it was really funny.
I had a lot of fun. And then I recently did Rum Bongo's Open Sauce, and that was a lot of fun as well.
Not Rum Bongo.
Oh, not Rum Bongo. Open Sauce at the Rum Shack.
Yes.
Produced by Cross My Laugh. Sorry, Rum Bongo. But Open Sauce at the Rum Shack in Southside, which Rum Shack's a great venue. I live around the corner, which is very convenient. And well produced, good set of comics, good
great
hosting.
Host, yeah.
Tyrion Boyd is a really good host and lovely person. And it's Southside, which Southside's a vibe. I like Southside.
Yeah, I'd say it's got the sort of niceties and fanciness of the West End, but with the up and comingness and grittiness of being a gentrified area, a newly gentrified area. I don't know if I've said this before on here, but like I did Open Sauce and I had a great time with Tarium because backstage he landed up talking to me about stuff before I went on, and then I went on and I forgot something, and then I got back on track and came off stage, and he gave me a bit of advice, and he said maybe just take a couple of minutes to just be like quiet before you're on, like before you go on, so you're in the zone, so you don't forget anything. And I was like thank you, I appreciate that so much. I usually do, but I'm too polite to tell you. I needed you to shut
Yeah.
up. And then we had a good laugh about it. He was like, oh, so it's my fault. Okay.
I do. It is a weird thing. It's weird being in a green room when there are other people around,
Yeah.
because everyone's just like in a usually a pretty small room, not looking at each other and just like going over notes, like
Doing this.
talking silently, or yeah, exactly. It's a very strange thing to watch. It would be like watching a bunch of NPCs on a video game kind of glitching
Yeah.
before going on stage.
I imagine people think that like performing in general, not just stand up, is like much more almost relaxed, I think, where it's like these people
Yeah.
are all confident, they're all excuse me, they're all capable, they're all comfortable, but actually most of the time people are just like shaking.
It's all a front. Yeah,
Like
it's all a front.
they're like, right, what the fuck is my first line?
Yeah.
I'm very pleased though, like, because I did have this real problem. I did have this real problem with forgetting my set, and it was just anxiety, and I would like have to look at my arm and check where I was and stuff. And it happened a bunch of times, but since I've been like taking ADHD medication, I haven't forgotten any. So that's
Hey.
actually functional, which is very nice. So yeah, what was your, well, I mean, you already said about, or you said in the last episode about lads coming in. What was your worst show?
Yeah, I won't name the details
No,
of the
no.
place or anything, but yeah, there was it was an open spot, and it was a fairly small space, and I think there were maybe 2 people there who were not the comedians performing.
A classic.
Yeah, and I was still fairly fresh. I think this was the first open mic that I had done that wasn't like affiliated with a course or in some way like a, fairly friendly kind of controlled.
Yeah.
This was like in the
Very
wild.
supportive.
Yeah. And yeah, I think there were maybe like 2 women on the bill, and a lot of dudes talking about their like wives and ex-wives and divorces and their sex lives in ways that were kind of like fake.
It's like very old school.
Well, what's the why can't I think of this word? They were like fake self-deprecating.
Right.
Like they like it was you'd have a guy who'd be like, yeah, I was like, I'm single and I've been having a lot of sex and like I'm really bad at it, but like I've been having so much sex. And it's like, you fuck off. Like you're obviously trying to sound like you're
having a lot
self-deprecating,
of sex,
but you also very clearly want everyone to hear that you're this, big man, whatever. Like just own up to the ways that you're shitty and stop trying to like soften it as though you like want to still come out with a win at the end of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of that was that, and I think that was the good part of it. And I've had people like more experienced comics say this to me, and I had this realization there. They were like, "There's a lot of shit comedians out there. People who call themselves comedians." There's just like, because and that was the thing where I realized I was like, I had a bit of the thought going in of, who am I, like going to these open mic things and be like, yeah, I'm a comedian, I got a set, whatever. And then I realized, oh, like literally any old asshole off the street can just be like, yep, I'm a comedian. I like, you don't even have to have anything ready. You can just message someone on Facebook and be like, hey, I want to do 5 minutes, and they'll be like, cool, great. Like, and I guess sort of the perk and the peril of lots of open spots is like lots of open spots that will take lots of people and you get a chance to perform if you're new, but also it means that anyone gets a chance to perform, and sometimes it's people who don't give
really
a shit
deserve
or just,
it.
There was I mean the other thing is, when he's on the note of like deservedness, there were a few people who showed up who like were not at all prepared, had their notes in front of them, and it wasn't like, you have your notes because you're trying new material.
Yeah.
That's fine, of course, yeah. But there were people who were just like hadn't even worked out like how to say the joke, and then it wouldn't land, and they'd be like, okay, well, fuck you guys didn't like that one. It's like, no, you've not prepped. You're wasting everyone's time here.
Yeah.
And I have very little patience for that. Like, even if it's free even if it's only 5 minutes, even if it's open to anyone, like 5 minutes, you're asking for 5 minutes of people's attention, and you should respect people for that.
Yeah.
And they're choosing to be in the audience at this venue and watching you, even if it's not you that they came to see.
Yeah, it's technically
but like
supporting you.
yeah, they're here to see, you have a responsibility, I think, to put some effort into at least trying to be funny and be entertaining.
Be good, be prepared.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's not about like, oh, you need to have memorized it exactly. It's just like, you need to have thought about it at least a little bit more,
Yeah.
and not be like rude to people if it doesn't land. Because
Yeah.
especially if you've not prepped it, like, you don't have that determination of, yes, that was definitely funny. It's just like, oh, well, I thought it was funny.
I even think that you're allowed to be bad. Like, you're allowed to be shit. Like, you can go up. I think you're allowed to go up with untested material that's not funny.
Yeah.
But
and you laugh and you go, oh, that didn't land in.
yeah, exactly. Like, I think that's totally fine. I think you don't have to be good. You don't have to be funny. You can go for 5 minutes and have no joke land. But like, as long as you have put in thought and like you genuinely think that those jokes are funny, and then you take the feedback if they're not and you work them and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's like a genuineness and sincerity that I regardless of how funny or unfunny your material might be, if you're going in with some sincerity and genuineness, I'm like, okay, I got time for you. I got great, no worries. But if you just like want to be on stage for the sake of being on stage, but also kind of want to play it a bit cool and be like, I'm here doing a 5-minute set, but I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Like, who really cares? Like, I just think that being insincere and like too cool for stuff is fucking boring, and don't waste my time being boring by acting like you're above this
like
thing.
You're better.
Yeah,
because you're not.
It's like it's like being on dating apps and coming across profiles that are like, I can't believe I'm on Hinge. I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, somebody make me do it. It's like, you're here. You're just as much here as I am here. So
You're
stop
not better
acting
than
like
me.
stop acting like you're better than this. You're here. You're here for the same reason as anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's because, I mean, this whole like pretending that you're too cool or above this or whatever, it's just protecting yourself. It's
Yeah.
just because you're scared. And I got a lot of time. I got a lot of patience for people who are scared. But if you don't even have the willingness to admit, like, hey, I'm nervous to be like, I'm nervous to be here. I'm new at this. I don't know if I'm any good at this. I got all the time in the world for that.
Yeah.
But go and be like,
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, whatever. Like,
it's like, that's
fuck
the
off.
lamest thing. Yeah.
Fuck off.
It's like, I wouldn't, because it's like, say, a lot of people will be calling themselves stand-up comics. And I'm like, I wouldn't say to somebody, oh, I'm a stand-up comedian. I would say,
neither.
I do stand-up.
Yes.
Like, I do stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
It's because I give it a go. Whereas I'll call myself an artist because I've been working on my art, and I, like, since I was a kid, like, it's something I do all the time. It's like something I know I'm experienced in. I would say I'm an actor because I've done enough acting to know that it's like, oh yeah, I'm an actor. I can say that I can do that. I've been paid to do it at times. Like, I know that I'm good enough at that. I wouldn't say I'm a stand-up comic because I'm just fresh. It's like, and I wouldn't say, oh, I'm a, well, I was gonna say, I don't have another example. I thought I did, but I don't. But yeah, it's about that humility and like, just not thinking so highly of yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's just, I'm getting eaten alive here, and it's very distracting. I don't know what's on my fingers. Oh, it's snacks. It's the treats from earlier.
Can we take a pause because I need to pee? And we're back.
Welcome back from your pee, Pat. Pat P.
That's me.
Pat P. I'm just hoping that the camera doesn't like cut off randomly, because it did cut off at like the last 10 minutes of me and James' episodes. So there's always some sort of technical calamity that happens in every episode, whether it's like, like, it's usually something like one of the mics didn't record, or none of the mics recorded, or the camera was like pointing over here, or there's always something. Anyway, so let's get back into it, of the questions. So, yeah, you do. So you do have a lot of improv.
I do some improv. Yeah. I started doing improv in 2022, and I did courses with the GIT, the Glasgow Improv Theatre. So went through their curriculum. I know I do love the GIT as a go on GIT. So they do a full curriculum based on the UCB curriculum, which is the Upright Citizens Brigade in Chicago. And so I've been through their curriculum and then performed with them in a few different teams since then.
Yes, and
whoa. Well, and if that's true, then what else is true is that I quite enjoy doing improv.
Yes, and no, sorry, I'm not going to do that to you.
It was a good joke.
Yeah, thank you. It's my only
One time.
improv joke.
One time it was good. That's plenty.
So, what's the kind of process? I've done improv in my many years as a theatery person. But like, what's your kind of your process? So is it like I've not been to one of your shows, I should come. But like the scenarios and like how do you set it up? Like
so I do long form improv, which is the two kind of broad categories. There's short form and long form. Short form is what you see on like Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's a bit more theater sportsy, and often kind of quick with generally often with like a premise or game that is known to the audience, and then you play within the constructs of that game, and that's sort of where the comedy comes from. And in long form, there are certain formats that are used sometimes, but long form, you're kind of finding the funny thing organically while in the scene, and then finding ways to heighten and play that game over and over. So it's a little bit different in terms of the sort of the mindset and thinking that you use. I've not done a lot of short form. Have
you seen Spontaneous before, like Spontaneous Sherlock, Spontaneous Potter, things like that?
Yeah, so I know the folks in Edinburgh who put on. I know a lot of the folks in Spontaneous Potter at least.
So is it like that then?
So there, I've not actually seen Spontaneous Potter itself. My read though is that would be more like long form. That would be, I would guess, long form narrative improv, because obviously they've got the structure of they're doing Harry Potter or whatever it is.
The world setting.
But by and large, they're kind of constructing within that world, that universe. They're kind of constructing the plot based on the word or suggestion from the audience. So that would be, from what I have seen at least of Spontaneous players, theirs is long form improv, and it's quite heavily premise based. So you kind of know some of what you're going to do going in, because you know that you're in the world of a school of witchcraft and wizardry, and some of those things are preordained because you know the format. And there are lots of other really great examples of like narrative or structured or premise based long form improv. The Free Association in London have a team that does a show called St. Doctor's Hospital, and it's like a medical procedural. So like your Grey's Anatomy, ER, kind of it's all inspired by that. And so they'll take a suggestion from an audience member, or like do an interview with an audience member. They'll kind of generate some ideas.
And it fits in the format.
It all takes place within, as though it's like a hospital drama or whatever. It's very, very funny.
What's yours then? What's your kind of?
So I've not done a lot of narrative or premise based improv. The team that I'm on, that I've been in for the last year, we are one of the house teams with the GIT, the Glasgow Improv Theatre. And we do a format that's called the Herald, which is considered kind of a fundamental, kind of foundational structure for long form improv. So the way it looks, if you were to kind of do a diagram, you would have, if you're very good at graphics, so you can add this in if you like after. So you'd start with, so you've got 10 scenes or parts to a Herald overall. So you get an audience suggestion. From there, you'll do an opening, which will generate ideas. There's lots of different forms of opening. Probably the most simple kind of one to explain is a monologue. So someone will, you ask for one word suggestion. Someone says, extra, whatever, and someone will give a monologue about something related to that the word extra makes them think of. Then you get ideas for scenes based on that. But there's lots of different types of openings. There's organic ones. You can do like sound and movement-y, very theatery ones. You can do more kind of comedy ones. And the idea is just taking that one word and building a bit from it and giving you ideas for premises. Then you'll do your first beat, so sort of your first round, and you'll do 3 different scenes inspired by the opening. So 3 completely different scenes with different premises. The idea in this first beat is you want to find what's called the game of the scene. So start out with a regular scene. You're building the world together by using things like yes and, which is I agree with what you say, and I paint on some more detail to it. We build this world, we build this situation together, how we know each other, what's going on with us. And then eventually, at some point, you'll introduce or find what we call the first unusual thing. And so, you and I are teachers, and we're talking about our parent-teacher interviews, and all of a sudden one of us will drop like, I really fucking hate children. I think children are, or whatever. That's not that unusual because there are probably lots of teachers who don't like kids. But anyway, there'll be something that's kind of unexpected, and that becomes sort of your funny thing. And then you ask, well, if this is true, what else is true? And so maybe, if this teacher really hates kids, really hates young people, or even or even it might be like they you'd often you do well to generally find a justification. So it might be like they hate kids because they remind them of their own mortality, and so then you'd have kids where it would be like a project talking about the future, and they'd be like, all those kids and their futures, and you're playing up that this teacher they hate kids, but really the kind of the unusual thing is just they are obsessed. They're scared of death, and that shows up in everything they do. So there's your game. There's the game of your scene. That's, you have a teacher who's afraid of death, and how can you find ways to put that in to a classroom setting? So so it might be a kid shows up with a note that's like, oh, like my grandma died, so I missed school, and it would be like, yeah, we're all gonna die someday, Jimmy. And they're like, what? So there's the unusual thing. So your first beat, that's kind of your responsibility. Your goal ideally is to find an unusual thing, play that game a little bit, and then after you have those first 3 scenes that make up your first beat, then you have a little sort of palate cleanser, which is a group game, which will be unrelated to any of the previous scenes. So I should start with, generally you'll have on an improv team, you'll have like anywhere from 5 to 8 people on a Herald team. So each of these scenes in your first beat is going to be a 2-person scene. You might have some people like walking on a little bit, but generally it's 2 people. Then you have a group game, which is everybody, or pretty much everybody, isn't it? So it's sort of a little palate cleanser. And there's some forms for group games that are used very often. Often it'll be like the most common one that gets kind of overused will be, everybody get in here. So it'll be like, doctors, everybody get in here. Everybody's too healthy. What are we going to do? Or something, some weird premise. And then you'll find sort of a game and you play it all together. And they're usually pretty quick and snappy. And then you get out of there. And then you're back for your second beat, where you're exploring the 3 scenes from your first beat, but kind of making them bigger. So it might be that you have the same characters, and you're continuing along like, it's 1 year later and the thing has gotten more extreme, or it might be that you take that sort of world and expand to like, like in a world where in this summer, one world, one premise, it's long form improv. So in a world where teachers are afraid of death because they're around young people, then maybe you have doctors who are around sick people all the time, and doctors are excessively afraid of disease. I don't know, just disease. But you would take that and make it more consequential, and
Right.
you find, and this is where,
Grander.
yeah, generally speaking, your first beat, you want your scenes to be at least somewhat grounded in reality and believable, and the second one is where you like go crazy.
Right.
Like the cliche of your like second beats and further along is that's where you end up with very often it'd be like Mr. President, because
Yes.
like the just making someone
Yeah.
the president
It's
is
like-
it's a high stakes scenario automatically.
It's like the teacher starts, like it's a post-apocalyptic scenario, and the teacher starts throwing children to zombies. 'Cause
Yeah,
they're so afraid of death.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just ridiculous escalation.
Yeah, you're just kind of blowing it up
Oh.
as much as you can.
That was mean. Sorry. just a little lick of apology there.
Watch your bites there, little dog.
Yeah. I mean, because we've been like scrapping a little bit, but that was just like sudden violence. We're all right. It's okay. It was just a wee threat. You okay? Yeah. Look at your little face. Anyway, yeah. So how many? So is there like, rather than having you explain the full, because it sounds like pretty intense.
Yeah.
It's a lot more.
Yeah, I suppose I'm
structured than I
doing a
thought.
real deep dive into this.
Yeah. Is it, so how
Then
many
you'll-
parts did you say?
So there's your opening, then
Mhm.
your 1, 2, 3 first scenes,
Yeah.
your group game, your 1, 2, 3 second beats.
Expansive scenes.
Then you'll do one more group game, which is another kind of palate cleanser,
Yeah.
and then you do one final scene, which is where ideally some of these 3 scenes will
Come
meet each other.
together.
Yeah.
The Love Actually effect.
Yeah, where like you'll have the teacher who fears death will bump into the clown president or whatever, like
Right.
and that's where you'll bring back like your best characters or one-liners, and they'll come in and be like, me too, and then blackout, everyone loves it. Yeah.
So how do you know who's like leading the scene effectively?
The default rule is first person who steps out gets the first line, and it's their idea.
Oh,
So if I step out and then you step out to support me, then it's my responsibility to deliver the first line. Ideally, with that first line, I want to tell you pretty clearly who we are to each other,
yeah.
what's going on, and where we are. So
Establish it.
yeah, you want to establish that baseline so then you know what's going on. Because I think the big thing with improv is you're not able to talk about what's going on while you're not in
you're,
the scene, right?
looking to each
Yeah,
other.
you don't get to be like, okay, so this is what we're gonna do here,
Yeah.
like you have to communicate it live in time. So you get these little tricks for it's almost like its own language, where you sort of have these little tricks for communicating what's going on while you're still in character playing the scene,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that takes practice, and that's the thing that especially like working with a team, being part of a team.
Experienced people. Hey, what are you doing? I'm just fine.
That's why it's important, like when you're in a team, to like practice with each other, get to know each
Yeah.
other and your styles and all that. And yeah, because it's very much a team sport. So yeah, and even skills, like there are skills and exercises you can do to practice
Yeah, like
some of those
outside
things,
of
like
the structure.
yeah, like how to have an initiation that clearly says
Yeah.
your who, where, and what.
So is
Yeah.
it always comedy? Because I mean, it sounds like it could be not comedy in the way that you do it.
I think there are sort of different schools of thought on this. I don't think that all improv has to be comedy. It tends to be comedy, and generally most of the
Just
schools of
farce is
improv.
easier to go
Yeah,
to,
and most of the schools of thought for improv are. I think the main thing is with improv, you're doing two things at the same time. You're writing and you're acting
yeah.
live in real time, and if you were to try to make something that were effectively like dramatic,
Emotive, yeah.
then that generally takes quite some thoughtful writing, which
Mhm.
obviously you can't do because you're doing it on the spot.
Yeah.
And so comedy becomes a bit easier because you don't have to be pre-writing all the funny bits because you just find the one funny thing and you just keep returning to it.
Yeah.
So like, again, if we have this example of a teacher who fears death, we don't need to write all kinds of clever lines for this person to say or for people to say about this person. It's already funny, and you can just play the scene as like, okay, now we're just going to be a regular old classroom of a teacher and kids. And if I'm a kid, what are just normal things that kids do in classrooms? And then the person who's the teacher just has to act like the teacher who is, they have to just make it about mortality. Yeah. So you don't have to really write as much. And so I think that's why improv lends itself to comedy.
Yeah.
Because it's more, there's you find the weird thing and you patternize it and can play it more as opposed to having to write something that is clever and thoughtful and or whatever.
Oh, that's it. Like, it's obviously really complex, and I have much of the skills there, I think, for that, just from the fact of all actors have to learn how to improvise, because if you don't, you're like, because that's acting is that, like, maybe I could honestly have you back on, we could just talk about acting for a really long time, but it's definitely a thing with acting that you are constantly realizing who the character is, and that's why you have rehearsal. It's not so you can memorize your lines, it's so that every time you say it, you'll say a line and you'll go, that doesn't feel like what they would say, what this person would say. And that's why a lot of actors, I think, land up being themselves and like being or these repetitive characters, is because that's the skill of being able to read someone's work and make it a believable character, even if that character is just yourself, is a skill in itself. Being able to be lots of different people is a separate skill, and that's much more improvisation, like in terms of developing your character. And like I say, why you rehearse, so that you can develop it as you go. But it sounds really fun. I feel like I would really enjoy doing that. Because I've been thinking about it, like all the comedy and stuff, and I love doing stand-up. I think it's great fun, but I do want to just I want to get more into writing. I want to get more into just different kinds of structures and performance, and improv just is, in my mind, improv is the kind of cleverest form of comedy because it's so like it's impressive to the outsider. Like, it's why hosting seems so difficult to people, is because it's like, did you really just come up with that joke on the spot because that person said that in the audience? It's like, no, they actually had the joke in their head. So being able to come up with it on the spot is just like a super duper impressive thing.
It's really incredible to see like very, very good improvisers, and especially like well seasoned and well practiced improvisers be able to like fully embody a character and know that character and play that character with a lot of depth and integrity when it's a character they've just like made up or been made to be, and also knowing that character, as soon as the scene is over, that character's gone and they're never coming back. Like pretty much.
Have you seen the comic Mara Joy?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know Mara. Yeah.
I talk about her all the
Mara's
time.
a great improviser as well.
So unbelievably funny.
Yeah.
Like her understanding of comedy and timing and what makes something funny is just she's honestly like my favorite about. I tell everybody, go see her.
Shout out to Mara Joy.
Yeah. Because she's like such an unassuming, quiet kind of person, and then just has these radical characters within her, and just absolutely knocks out of the park every time I've seen her do stand up, and it's always it's non-traditional, which I really like.
Very smart comic.
Yes.
Very smart comic.
So I'm we're big fans. So what you do, so we mentioned PJ on OJ. What inspired you to write a bit that was 20 years out of date from the start? Because it's hilarious. So you don't even need to know that much about OJ to...
Yeah, so for anyone who's not seen my bit, I do a bit where I talk about OJ Simpson quite a bit. And the backstory behind it, so the backstory is true. This is where it comes from. I worked at a place and it was a restaurant, and I was a manager there. And one time it was quiet, and we were like cleaning out, a storage cupboard or whatever, organizing stuff. And there was this NFL football that had, I'm sure that it wasn't actually like signed by, I'm sure it was mass produced and bought or whatever. But the place that I worked at had like New York in the name. And it said like, you always have a good time at NY, signed O.J. Simpson. And it was so weird. It's just so strange to have it, because obviously this must have been like produced and bought presumably like in the 80s, early 90s, before his trial, when he was, the football star, and the comedies had done, Airplane and The Naked Gun or whatever they were. And obviously these footballs are like mass produced with this signature. I never found out the backstory. I asked everyone, I was like, where did this come from? This is hilarious. And nobody knew. And I assume that it wasn't actually signed by OJ, because that would be valuable, even if it's weird and kind of creepy.
I'm sure there's people who collect his stuff.
So I presume it must have been from the 80s or 90s, originally produced in the 80s, 90s, when OJ merch would have just been a normal thing. Before his trial in 95, I think it was. Yeah. And just from there, I thought about like, what if, because then we did like sort of put it on display. There was like, there were like shelves that would have like, old books and like empty, cool looking bottles that were empty, and you'd never be able to see like what it said, because it was like above. Yeah. But it was just to create atmosphere, and so just having this football there was fine. But yeah, the fact that it was an OJ side thing on display, I was like, what if it were in a place of prominence, and then what if this place was just like, we're an American restaurant and we love OJ. Like we still love OJ. We don't care. We just love him. We love everything. We watched the trial. We're
side with OJ.
And I also just think, obviously with the caveat that what OJ did is horrendous and horrific. Just the way that trial took off and became a cultural moment. And everybody knew, like, I was born in 89, and so when it was happening, I was too young to understand or know anything. And then even after, like, we would watch Airplane and Naked Gun and see that, and be like, oh, it's OJ. After he had been on trial, like, after, and then, obviously, at the time, the way that it existed so vividly in the culture, and I think about, like, Norm Macdonald hosting Weekend Update, and always coming back to, like, the punchline being like, and OJ's guilty. Like, there's something really interesting about the way that it existed within the culture.
Because it works. Like, your bit absolutely works. Like, it doesn't matter that it's, like, so long out of date. It genuinely...
there was one set I had where it was right after OJ had died, and I was like, fuck, this really might fuck with my set. And I sort of addressed it, and I said, like, I had a quick line about, like, OJ died recently, and that's actually been very convenient for me, because we put it back. And I was like, okay, sweet, that'll be a good thing that'll sort of bridge. And it actually didn't really get any laughs. And I think whether OJ has died recently or not, like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. The OJ that exists in the culture is OJ who murdered people and was obviously guilty but got off, and the media circus around the trial.
It's not the picture, it's not the picture of the man, it's the vision of that car, like, slowly, like, it's all of those elements, as the glove, like, it's, as you say, it's this cultural stamp. And the brilliant thing about that, the reason why it's amazing that it works and stuff, is, like I say, there's not this mass culture anymore. There's just like this all these microcultures, but because of the way that most people who are coming to see stand-up comedy are gonna get that, because it's been through that, it's in that zeitgeist. And I just think it's hilarious. So you should absolutely go see Pat's set and hope that he does his OJ bit, because it's freaking brilliant. Pat, what else? What have you got coming up? I know it's a while away because we've recorded this so soon, but you can tell them about.
I'm on Instagram at Fancy Pat, because it's like fancy that, But
Oh, I didn't get that. I just felt it was fair because you are fancy.
Well, I think of myself as being not particularly fancy. Again, I will eat ice cream off the ground.
Yeah.
Not
fancy in a upper echelon fancy kind of way, but fancy as in like you've got that fancy hair.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
You've got flair.
Yeah, I'm fancy in a way that like a suburban mom might say, "Oh, that's funky. He's funky."
Fancy boy. Come on.
So Fancy Pat is my Instagram. I post some stand-up stuff. I haven't really posted any material or anything there, but I also don't post a lot of other stuff. So there you go. But follow me along on there, and call me sometime.
Yeah.
Call me up on the phone.
Yeah.
Here's my number.
Here, you get Cashew up so we can.
Cashew, come here, Bubba.
And
this is my dog.
Oh my God, sorry. Cashew Jones. So, oh fuck.
There he is. He doesn't like to stay in the same place.
No. So thank you very much, Pat, for coming on and for doing a full 2 episodes because it's definitely going to be now.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you, Cashew, for completely covering my living room in hair, but also being so damn cute. It's worth it. Snuffling away. You want to say?
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. Thank you for listening to Out on a Limb. We'll be back next time with another fantastic, hilarious guest. Thank you again, Pat, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey!
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw!
Bye.
Bye.
It's Out on a Limb.